I have a complicated relationship with the Forza franchise. I credit it with being the game that reignited my love for cars during my teenage years, allowing me to live out my auto ownership fantasies rent-free. But I've previously expressed my frustration with the series' recent direction. The newer Forza games cast a wide net, the one with larger holes. To be clear, I enjoy the newer games to a degree, but some part of that just feels hollow. The handling has changed, as has the focus of the car selection. Horizon 3 and 4 ditched a formula that was more or less perfected in the second spin-off, in favor of creating an experience so open-ended that it feels directionless. Every time I boot up a Forza game from the Xbox One era, whether or not I enjoy myself is like flipping a coin. With years having passed since I last sat down with an older Forza game, I thought maybe I'd just grown out of the series' Simcade presentation in the near decade since Motorsport 4's release. But within minutes of popping in the 2011 entry, it all came flooding back to me. For my money, this is the best game in the Forza series by far. No drivatars, no showcase events, no loot boxes, and no character cosmetics. Forza 4 has only the features that actually matter, but even better, it has all the cars that don't. I'd argue that Forza 4's car roster is the best in the history of racing games, even toppling the likes of Gran Turismo 5 despite having only half as many cars on disc. While Polyphony's list is great, it's padded out with variants, racing versions, and duplicates, all with a noticeable Japanese bias. By contrast, Forza 4 offers wheels from every corner of the globe, from the Ford Fusion to the Fiat Punto Sport, the Saturn Ion to the Lexus CT. All four of the cars I just named have only ever been drivable in Forza games. Hell, the CT was only available in specifically this game. And even if you aren't a weirdo who likes driving stuff like this, well, you've got all the Ferraris, Lambos, and Astons you could ever want. Of course, the lineup has gotten a bit dated over the last decade, but while newer racers may have the latest exotics, you'll be hard-pressed to find Toyota Altezza in a newer game. You ever hear the expression, slow car fast is better than fast car fast? This game is the only game I've ever played that perfectly captures that feeling. It doesn't do it by adding blur and speed lines, nor does it make everything drive like a Formula 1 car. This is where the game's vaguely simulator-ish roots really shine. If your vehicle is heavy, it feels heavy. If you have no torque or grip, you won't be able to pull yourself out of a slide. But at the same time, these vehicles don't feel completely useless as in most other games they're featured in. Learning to handle a car is half the fun, and the rest is in battling with the AI. Normally, computer opponents don't offer much challenge in this sort of game, and with a supercar, Forza 4 is no exception. But in overweight, underpowered, or otherwise suboptimal cars, the AI will provide some genuinely close fights for position. Cleanly passing a bot in a car that by all measures should leave you in the dust is seriously gratifying, as is running a race consisting entirely of Priuses. Prii? Pre? This feeling is still present in newer Forza games, but you're given significantly fewer opportunities to experience it. I remember being immediately disappointed when I got my Xbox One and Forza 5 because the car list is so bare. Forza Motorsport 5 had less than half as many cars on disc as the previous entry, and most of the casualties were obscure or slow cars that made the previous generation so fun. Lexus CT, gone. Mitsubishi Starion, gone. Pontiac Solstice, paid DLC. Hummer H1, paid DLC. The entire Saturn brand, gone. The entire Porsche brand, gone. Forza 6 and 7 brought some of these cars back, but the handling model has gotten worse with each subsequent entry. On a controller, Forza 7's cars feel aggressively understeery. It's not impossible to play, but it requires much more focus, effort, and skill than earlier games. And it's not that Forza 4 was too easy or simple by comparison. The difference lays primarily in how responsive cars feel on a controller. Turning in, braking, and accelerating out of turns with a gamepad feels much more akin to actually driving a car than in later entries. This is where I feel Motorsport 4 is a cut above its younger siblings. It's just much more playable. Even as someone who plays proper sim racing games with both a wheel and a controller, I feel like I have to relearn how to play Forza 7 every time I take a break from it. Forza 4 isn't like that. It's a relaxing and fun experience from the moment you turn it on, but it's still deep enough to be engaging if that's what I want from it. This is also partly a consequence of the way these two games are structured. Motorsport 4 has dozens of events with different performance, body style, and brand restrictions that incentivize mixing things up, complete with a choice of free cars at every level up. Each step in the season play mode entails only 1 or 2 races before freeing the player to change cars and categories if they so wish. In Motorsport 7, events run for 5 or 6 races in the same class. Vehicles can be switched out for others within the same category, but where every car in Forza 4 felt unique, vehicles within the same class in Forza 7 just don't. while races tend to be closer, just barely edging out the win is less satisfying when you're doing it in equal cars. I know a computer driver is faster than me. If I beat an AI on equal footing, it's because it let me. But that's not the case if I do it in a Civic while they're in an actual sports car. I've always loved games like Forza and Gran Turismo for letting me play with new toys constantly, and seeing Motorsport 7's structure betray that stings a little bit. If I want to drive a variety of different kinds of vehicles, I have to spend significantly longer playing the game to finish the long tournaments. Bizarre Creations' Project Gotham Racing series died because Forza was doing better in that arcade circuit racing niche. But once Forza transitioned into being a more serious game, nothing stepped up to fill the gap Project Gotham left. Horizon is more casual, but it's a different beast. It's more about freedom and spectacle than racing, and even those games have a bias in favor of sports cars and supercars. The weakest cars in Motorsport 4 are there for you to drive. The weakest cars in Horizon 4 are there for you to laugh at. Not that there isn't absurdity in Motorsport 4. There is. It offers plenty of comedy through upgrades, liveries, and the top-tier cameos. The difference is that all the humorous moments in Forza 4 happen as a result of player expression, not because the writer and designer at Playground had a funny idea over lunch. The only exception is the Top Gear bowling challenges, which are the least interesting part of the game, but they're brief and toss the player right back into the game's usual sandbox once they're over. Any irritation caused by these events is immediately overwritten by the sheer comedy of taking a 1970s Chevelle around Suzuka. When I reviewed the Ford racing franchise last year, I harped on the phrase, "It's not the driving, it's the cars." Despite being separated by a console generation and millions of dollars of budget, Forza 4 and Ford Racing 2 are special for the same reason. They're focused on the cars being fun to drive rather than the actual racing experience. Every car handles differently, and provides a unique way to play the game. For all three of these titles, there are sim games more realistic and arcade games more visceral. But what makes them stand out is the ability to drive such a wide gamut of vehicles that aren't offered anywhere else. For all these games' flaws, they exemplify the beauty of cars, and make me fall in love with them every time I play. The problem is that Forza 7 just lacks the same focus the brand used to bring to the table. But there is time to fix that. With Turn 10's next Forza title dropping the number, this is their Project Cars 3 moment, a chance to reinvent the brand rather than iterating on its past. But that isn't to say that teams shouldn't look back on their previous success. This franchise has endured for 3 console generations for a good reason, and reflecting on that reason might just be the shot in the arm the series needs. Taking the time to understand why Forza 4 is still so good after nearly a decade has helped to renew my appreciation for the series. It's not like the game really pushed the genre forward. It simply took a variety of the best features from all manner of games and did them exceptionally well. After spending a week with Forza 4, I booted up Forza 7 for the first time in months, and I found myself enjoying the newest entry more than I have since launch. It's not my first choice, and I have very real issues with the game's UI, structure, and sandbox. But at the end of the day, I know that the key to getting the most out of a Forza game is picking a car, picking a track, and having the most fun I can hooning around, whether or not the game is built to facilitate that. Forza 7 may be as wide as a lake and deep as a puddle, but there's no shame in splashing around in it anyway. In the Forza 3 and 4 era, the series' tagline was, "Where dreams are driven." That mission statement perfectly captures what these games are all about, and I can only hope that one day, Turn 10 remembers that not all dreams come with 6-figure price tags. The observant may have noticed that my uploads have been much more frequent in recent weeks, and there are a couple of reasons for this. First, I'm making conscious efforts to stop scope creep from sabotaging my work. Keeping a narrower focus should help me get through topics more efficiently, and in turn allow me to cover more topics that I'm interested in. My game plan is to consistently release videos like those from my Weird Ports series, while working on longer projects like the Underground review over time, so that making a 30-minute video about Most Wanted doesn't mean my channel sits inactive for 6 weeks. The second reason is just as personal, but less poetic. Numbers. The algorithm giveth and the algorithm taketh away. It's clear one 15 to 20 minute video per month is not appeasing the YouTube overlords, and a pattern I've noticed is that when my uploads are more frequent, YouTube is more likely to recommend my new videos. I've welcomed more subscribers and read more comments in the past 7 days than I have in the past 3 months. This wasn't an intended effect with the new upload schedule, but it is a welcome one. But there is also the matter of money. I'm still furloughed from my job as a result of, well, you know, and it's not looking like I'll return to work until at least the new year. I've been driving deliveries and picking up gig work here and there, but it's not always been enough. My lovely Patreon supporters have been helping me stay afloat, and last week was one of the best weeks in terms of ad revenue the channel has ever seen. I'm still going out of my way to avoid placing excessive mid-rolls, sometimes foregoing them altogether, and I don't do sponsored cards either. I've turned down sponsor offers from, well, you can guess, in favor of maintaining my integrity. But the fact remains that I've got to eat and pay my bills. If the new upload schedule means I continue to grow and earn at the same rate I have recently, and my patrons continue to be as generous as they have been, YouTube could serve as my primary source of income at least until things level back out. So, as much as I hate to ask directly, if you enjoy what I do and can comfortably do so, supporting me on Patreon would make a massive difference in my life right now. I'd much rather spend my time writing and editing videos for you guys than standing in a gas station in the middle of a pandemic. I've recently added more perks to the Patreon, and if there's demand, I'd like to hold more community events for patrons going forward. I also hope to stream more frequently, though I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of that. Whether this remains a part-time gig or grows into a career, I genuinely enjoy doing what I do, and I hope you all enjoy watching it just as much. Whether you're a patron, a member of the Discord, or just a quiet viewer, thank you from the bottom of my heart for the last year of support, encouragement, and friendship. It means more than I can express. Most Wanted Remake or Remaster. I would love to see the first two Max Payne games get the Resident Evil 2 treatment. I love Max Payne 3, but as much as I like the first two games, they haven't aged as gracefully in terms of technology, and I also prefer Max Payne 3's focus on precise gameplay and weighty, animation-based movement, though I think I'd rather them just make another game at this point. What brings you towards racing games of all genres to make content on? I grew up playing a lot of racing games and spending a lot of time at car shows. As I've gotten older, car YouTube and motorsports have kept me hooked. What's a good Halloweeny album, song, or playlist you vibe to? Rob Zombie's Hellbilly Deluxe. Can't go wrong with the classics. What car do you always need in racing games? The Mazda RX-8. It's a car that I'm absolutely in love with and want to own one day. I know it's not really anything special in the grand scheme of things, but I find it absolutely beautiful and unceasingly cool. What's your favorite non-standard gaming accessory? I own an HKS racing controller for PS3 that I've yet to use, but DJ Hero turntables and Poppin' Music controllers are honorable mentions. There's also something y'all will hear about next week, but I'll leave that as a surprise. Favorite fictional video game car? The fake BMW 5 Series from Mercenaries 2. No, I don't know why.